There were times in your life where you made plans in a very prayerful manner, and there were other times in your life when you made decisions and it was not done in as prayerful of a manner. You'll see that God was with you when you were very prayerful. We need to make plans that are always prayerfully submitted to God if we want God to honor our plans.
This is a Truth Transforms Truth Nugget, a daily dose of truth for your daily transformation.
We're going to make our profit, we're going to gain our wealth, we're going to make our livelihood, and then we're going to move on. They were very confident in their success. They were very confident in everything they were going to plan. And James is saying, this is not good. In fact, the boasting about it is very prideful, is what James is saying. And, if we're honest, we boast about the things we plan too. We may not do it aloud, but we may boast in our heart. And what the scripture is showing us is that we need to humbly submit everything to God. We might think we have things figured out. We might think we have good skills and abilities, and we make good plans, but although planning is good, it must all be submitted to God. James is not saying it's not good to plan. It's stupid and unwise to not plan. But he's saying when you make all of your plans, you better be making all of those plans and all of those specific plans very prayerfully. Every bit of it must be done prayerfully as the Christian. And so he gives them an alternative. He says, instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. This prideful planning. I know someone that had a very prideful plan before. They knew exactly what they're going to do. You'll find this person in Scripture. Jesus told a parable about this person. He had great wealth. He had lots of grain. He had lots of crops to store. And he had a little bit of a problem. But it's a problem that none of us really think that we would mind having. He's like, you know what? I've got so much wealth and so much grain. Here's what I'm going to do. My barns aren't big enough. So I'm going to tear them down and build bigger ones. And I'm going to live out the rest of my life, eat, drink, and be merry. And Jesus commended him for that, right? For his great planning. No, Jesus condemned him for that and said, you fool, this very night your life will be taken from you. Obviously, it's dealing mostly with the idea of riches and storing up treasures on earth rather than in heaven, but it's also dealing with the issue of prideful planning. Planning in a way that doesn't even consider God, doesn't even consider what God would want him to do for the rest of his life. He just wanted to take it easy the rest of his life because he had accumulated that kind of wealth. But we need to be submitted to God with all of our plans. Prideful planning does not bring God glory. In fact, prideful planning is dishonoring to God. And now we need to make sure then that all of life's plans are submitted to the will of God. All right, so think back over previous plans that you've made in the past. I guarantee this has to be true with every Christian. There were times in your life where you made plans in a very prayerful manner, and there were other times in your life when you made decisions and it was not done in as prayerful of a manner. You just think back through those times in your life and think about the situation. I don't want to focus on the results necessarily, but if you think about the results, you'll see that God was with you when you were very prayerful. Doesn't mean that the results turned out that great, but the one thing I think that you will notice if you look back at those two times, the time when you were very prayerful in your decision making and the time when you were not, is that your relationship with Christ certainly was closer, and you felt like the decisions you were making, regardless of the results, were turning out you were doing the work that God would have you do. You were doing what God was wanting you to do. And that doesn't mean that we don't mess up, and that doesn't mean that things always turn out well, but we need to make plans that are always prayerfully submitted to God if we want God to honor our plans. And they should be plans submitted to Him. So whatever the result, we need to submit to God's will in all of life's plans. So then what are some plans that you're making right now that are submitted to the will of God? What are some plans that you might be thinking about or maybe you're making right now that are not submitted to the will of God? Those are some things to think about. Do you have something that you need to submit to the Lord's will? We need to submit all of our plans to God. We need to be prayerful and humbly submitted to the sovereign will of God when we determine our actions and map out our plans for the next phase of our work life, church life, family life, or any other part of our life. And God is glorified when our plans are humbly submitted to His will. Well, let's look at verse 14 now. Verse 14 shows us pride revealed.
Well, I do pray that was a blessing. Now, do me a favor, and if you enjoyed today's Truth Nugget, go ahead and hit that like button. That really does help to spread this to more people. Also, if you're new to the channel, you've joined us in the middle of a series on the book of James. And you can find all of the Truth Nuggets on the book of James in a playlist that'll be available in the description and also on the channel homepage. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next episode.